how can we make this not just like, okay, think about it in a theoretical way, but also these are the things you do. And, so we're going to keep touching on it as long as indies need it.
There's so much.
Because it's so essential.
Yeah, this podcast could have been like 10 episodes because there's so much to go over. Like we didn't even talk about.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast brought to you by Indepreneur.io.
What's up, indies? Welcome back to Creative Juice. I am your co-host, Circa. With me, as always, Corrin Campbell. Corrin, are you excited for today's episode?
I'm stupid excited.
Dumb excited.
I'm crazy excited. I'm cabin fever excited.
Right. Overzealous excited.
Overzealous, can't leave the house excited.
Yeah. Coronavirus is sweeping the nation. For us, it sucks that this horrible pandemic has descended upon the population of this planet. That said, it's changing industries in a big, big way. And I think that we've been talking about it's just weird that like all these musicians are staying home, not gigging, live streaming, looking out there for information on live streaming. And we're just kind of over here like, hey, we know how to live stream.
Yeah. We've been saying, oh, you need to make sales online now because you can't tour. Guess what?
Right. And now we're seeing that, not to go too far into this, maybe this deserves its own podcast episode, but I was really excited to see that the UFC was going to do a live pay-per-view event with no audience, which kind of is like, if you're the president of the UFC right now, you got to be thinking, how do I get this in VR? And like, I think that, if we see more and more things like this, where social distancing is like a common tactic that's used to fight these kinds of viruses, then we're going to see a push towards that. Some of my favorite musicians are live streaming more than ever on IG, and just kind of talking about, well, what am I going to do? My show money's gone. I guess I'm going to have to go on Twitch or something, It's interesting because I think it was like late 2019, we were talking about how VR, right? The visions that we were seeing for the future, or no, that was late 18 even. We were talking about like predictions for 19. And, the technology is in development, but there was not really any kind of push, right? And so, as much as I don't want to make light of the situation that we're in right now, there are things that happen in the world that cause technological change and change industries. And this is a situation where it's like, okay, we're going to have to figure out a solution. And so that might actually push this technology to the forefront of development now, which I think is exciting, right? Like these are the silver linings that come out of, situations like these. So hopefully that's technology that's developed quickly and is more available to indies in the future to, do more and more of this stuff. Andrew the dev just blew a bunch of vape smoke in my face. Let's go. It's time. It's time to talk about the buddy system in depth. And this time I want to go over it in a way that I think we sometimes fail to go over it, which is that it really is based. It's not like a theory thing. It's based on, it's supposed to point you to actual tangible assets. So we're going to break this buddy system down stage by stage. Each stage, we're going to talk about where do you get the people, and then who are supposed to go into that stage, and then how do you follow up with people once they've gone through that stage. Two different types of audience and the methods you use to actually communicate with them so that you know that they're the right people. And so we're going to tie it all back from theory to like practical application as we go through the stages. The first stage is introduction. And we like to think of this as best posed as an indirect introduction, which if you know anything about social psychology or you were like, life of the party growing up, that an indirect introduction, or if you're an introvert, you have to know that an indirect introduction is the best. It's better if a friend introduces you and says nice things about you than if you introduce yourself and say nice things about yourself, although that can be an attractive quality in a person.
I'm just laughing because I know guys like that and girls. There's like, okay, I get it. You're awesome, but I'm gonna peace out now.
There's sometimes you can walk into a job interview and be like, look, I'm fucking sick at this and you should hire me. And it's like, well, all right. that's, you know, maybe you are. That'd be tight.
I like your confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. But, you know, especially in a music context, this is especially true. We like to feel as if we discovered bands. It's a form of social capital. If you've ever read Contagious by Jonah Berger, I think is his name. I probably screwed that all up, but this guy basically wrote a book about, and I'm going to look it up on Audible right now so that I'm not sounding like an idiot, but this guy wrote a book about how products catch on. Oh shit, I got it exactly right. Contagious by Jonah Berger. And so he talks about, why do products catch on? Why do memes catch on? Why do things go viral? And one of the things is that if I share with you something that you do not yet know about, I have social capital. I'm tuned in. My finger is on the pulse of what's dope. And so what we really want when we discover a musician is we want to discover them. We want no one in our social circle to know who they are yet. That's best. You ever like ask a friend who you think already should know this band you just discovered and they don't, and you get that little glimmer of hope inside your heart of like, oh, I'm cooler than you right now for this brief moment, you know?
Right. It's funny because like that happens with a lot of things that I think a lot of people don't think about. Like I was even on stand-ups with the team a couple of days ago, and I'm like, man, the market, you know, like we don't talk about finance that much, but it's a thing right now. Like, you know, if it's front page news for Common Household, we might talk about it. So I was like, man, the market's crazy. And I was like, but I'm using this service that it's AI driven and does tax loss harvesting. And I was like, so right now it's killing it because it's offsetting all of the gains of the portfolio I had with it last year. And it's, you know, basically investing in a bunch of losses, right? Because it's able to kind of make up for that and set off taxes. So, and I was, you know, everyone's like, hey, what is that? You know, and then Jack and I had a conversation about what it is, and I felt smart.
Right.
Because
when you show someone else something that they actually get value from, that's what it ties back to. It's that it's like, I gave you value, dude. I'm sick. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's why we want to discover bands, and we kind of feel an ownership over them. Like if we discovered them, we feel like when they get famous, everyone else talks about them. They're like, we were here first, and like they're not as good as they used to be when I was first a fan and you weren't. So
right.
So yeah,
I'm OG fan of that
exactly
whatever thing. Yeah.
And so the best way to get a new fan is for them to feel as if, hey, I wasn't told to like this by somebody and they didn't reach out to me directly. It was an indirect, passive, I discovered this. I'm friggin' Tomb Raider and I was digging through the caves in South America and I found this band, right?
Right.
So that's kind of what we want out of it. And so knowing that, what's the best way for someone to encounter you online? Ideally, from a source of information that they are not directly tied to, right? So if you follow like a really hip blog that like none of your friends follow and they write about this artist and you're like, this artist is next, that feels good. Now, if you follow a really hip person that you know personally and they say this is the next band, you don't feel as good because they're in your social climate. They're in your environment, so they get the credit, not you. But if you can bring something from the outside into your social environment, you get the credit. And that's really why, like, I'm not joking you. That's why we fetishize this discovery process is like, I need to find something in the depths so that I can bring it into my climate and shed light on it.
Yeah. And it's something that like you don't think about, right? And so you really have to self-evaluate how things are when you are interacting with your friends. Because when I was like, no, yeah, you guys got to check out this investment bot. Like I wasn't thinking, oh, I feel important right now because I'm sharing this thing and they haven't heard of, you know what I mean? Like that's not what you're thinking about it consciously in the process, you know? But there's a reason why you get that little lift, that excitedness, right? When you're sharing something new with someone and you're diving and you're like, no, but look at this, or like sending someone a YouTube video, right?
I brought treasure back to the colony is basically what it is.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I was a gatherer of things, and now here are the things that I gathered.
It's the same reason why we hoist up the tribesman who makes the big kill and brings back a feast for everybody. There's a reason that guy gets credit or that gal gets credit, in today's era.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, it's something that you have to think about yourself in an objective way and kind of trust us that we absorbed the knowledge that really smart people have evaluated people this way, you know?
Right.
But yeah, that's definitely, I think that's something that you can start noticing in yourself if you think of it intentionally.
Yeah. And so, okay, so we know that that's the best way to introduce yourself, but how do you get people to discover you online? A lot of people think about this, and the easiest thing to think about is like, if I'm on a big playlist, people haven't heard of me before. It's not a primary source of information. It's removed from your social ecosystem. And so, boom, if I'm on a playlist, I'm going to get discovered by tons of people. And that's why we fetishize playlists at a deep psychological level, because we know it is a great source for an indirect introduction that allows people to quote unquote discover us. It is why we fetishize playlisting and radio. But there's another way. Advertising, right? Social, especially social media advertising. Now, if you went and you did, wait for it, advertising. So now, if you think of advertising as billboards and television commercials and newspaper, classifieds, and you say no one's going to care about a musician advertising there, you're right. But today we have social advertising. And I would say radio is not even a very good source. But with social advertising, the game has completely changed. So we've created a medium where people are all the time consuming content for free. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. They're all the time looking for content that is tied to a social ecosystem that they can discover and then they can share. That's all it's about.
Right.
Either they're creating the content or they're stumbling upon it. And that is one of the major sources of social capital on these social networks. When you advertise on these social networks and social media platforms, you have an opportunity to appear as discovered content. Most advertisers ruin that opportunity by, trying to make a sale immediately. There's nothing wrong with that. If you run an e-commerce company, you can do that. But us musicians, because of the way that fans encounter music, we're better suited to create content that slips under the radar and passes as content that you just discovered on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok.
Yeah, it's more of a covert operation.
Exactly. Native advertising is what they call it.
Right, exactly. And that's why, when we're talking about having someone introduce you, right, not only do we then structure these ads or, these kinds of posts in a way that is, not obviously an ad, but also, creating content and, strategizing what type of content you're going to be publishing in a way that it's like, okay, this is shareable. This is something that's significant enough that people are going to be like, yeah, I'm going to share this on my profile. And then that's exactly demonstrating what we're talking about with the guy, the gal that wants to be first in their circle to be presenting, some kind of content. So that's why it's so important that those first forward-facing ads don't feel like ads, is so that you can more organically tap into the way people think naturally.
I would say that we can in the introduction stage, you want two things. If you just wanted one thing, which would be to make a great indirect discovery style introduction, the best platform for doing that would be playlists and would be blog PR.
Right.
But we don't just want people to discover you. We also want to be able to follow back up with those who did discover you and not those who didn't.
Right.
And that's an important distinction there. So the reason we use advertising is because it does allow us to get discovered and slip in as native content. But it also allows us to run ads against a specific audience of those who did discover us. Whereas if you get placed on a blog or you get placed on a playlist, it's not like you can run an ad campaign to those people who listen to you on that playlist. That's not an option for you. You got to hope that they go and Google you. And your name better be Googleable, and you better have tons of content, or else they're going to be lost forever. You're just going to exist on their playlist as something that pops up every once in a while, and they never reinvestigate.
Right. Yeah, dude, that's a thing. And that's why it's also good. Like, to have multiple places where your metadata is populating Google, right? Like that's why I still, even though MySpace is no longer a thing, I still have a MySpace profile. There's nothing on it except for a couple of, I did actually upload my songs there. And like my name fortunately is Googleable if people spell it right, but it's not necessarily very easy if they, search with an E. Finally, over time, it started to still, show up. But even like on one of our YouTube videos of a podcast a few weeks ago, somebody was like, I looked for you guys on Spotify and I can't find either of you. That's because, Circa is like just put out his, his new music on Spotify. It's the freshest thing that's out there. So he's not necessarily high in the algorithms there yet. He will be. I'm confident of it.
And my name is a common Latin word. So it's not exactly ideal.
Right. So if you go to Spotify and you search Circa, it's Circa Survive, which is what pops up for me. Right. So, and then with mine, if you spell my name wrong, it's not going to pop up on Spotify, so that's why getting on Google and making sure that, even like registering some misspellings of your name and your metadata, blah, 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 which we can talk about that in another episode. But that's why you want to be as omnipresent as possible, is that, if people don't know how to spell your name or they're not quite sure and they just heard of you somewhere, right? That there's always a way to tie back so they can, if they want to educate themselves, which we're getting into shortly, if they want to educate themselves, there's a way for them to do that without you having to necessarily do it.
Yeah. Yep. And that's really the essence of the introduction stage, is that it is the stage at which people who have no idea who you are both discover you and do it in an indirect way, which allows you to follow back up with them. The ability to follow back up with them after so think of each stage as a gateway, right? And people go through the gateway. Once they go through the gateway, they are introduced, right? They have become introduced to you. And if you can follow back up with those people who have gone through the gateway, that's called a return path. If you can't distinguish between those who haven't gone through the gateway and those who have, like for instance, like let's say I get a blog article on the fader and I want to follow back up with the people who read that blog article. The best that I can do is target the fader, which is tons of people who didn't read that blog article and maybe a few who did. That's not a valid return path. So same with Spotify playlists. Like there's no valid return path. That's why we covet this one kind of method, but there are others. There are plenty of others. And so that's introduction. That's the theory behind it. And now let's tie it back to real shit, man. Okay. The number one way that ideally, right? We don't want to run your music. We don't want anyone to stumble upon your music, because a broad majority of people in the world won't like your music, right? A broad majority of people won't. That's kind of the point. You're looking for the people who are much more likely to actually enjoy it. So we can start to carve out psychographic, demographic profiles of who is likely to enjoy your music, and then target those people with these social media advertising platforms, which is another benefit of social media advertising. That's who is your pre-introduction audience, is ideally a targeted audience that you can pay to reach. And it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what your skin color or your religion or your, sexual preferences. No matter who you are, how much money you have, doesn't matter. You can run ads. No one's going to exclude you from running ads. You're ugly. You got a big boil on your forehead. Nobody cares. Okay? Nobody cares, which is not the case for the fader. Okay? The fader, not all of those things I just said are true. All right. So not to hate on the fader. I love the fader. I'm just saying, like, I don't see a lot of people with boils on the fader's covers. You know what I mean?
True that. Yeah.
So, and I'm sure there are good singers with boils, like Suzanne Boyle. So anyways, moving on.
Throwback.
For real. Yeah. I'm going a million miles a minute here. So, okay.
I know.
We know that everyone who's never heard of you is your targetable audience for the introduction stage. It's more ideal if they are targeted. And then once they go through the gateway, here's how you can follow back up with them. We run video ads on Facebook and Instagram. In Facebook and Instagram, you can create audiences. Like in an audiences panel, you create an audience of people who have watched a certain percentage of that video you ran the ad on. And then later you can run an ad campaign to just those people. That's your return path. So 75% video viewers, 50% video viewers, people who watch your video 50% of the way through, 75% of the way through. These are your introduced audiences. Now, there are secondaries too. There's people who have visited your Instagram or Facebook profile and engaged with it. They're kind of introduced, maybe slightly the next stage as well. There's people who, maybe visited your YouTube channel and watched a video. These are all valid, retargetable audiences who have been introduced. So now we start to see not only can you manually introduce people, but now you have a way to bring them through the next gateway.
Right. And it should be noted too, because we talk about video view percentages a lot. And, even though this is a very basic concept, if you've been with us for a while, something that you have to think about is that if you are targeting video views for 50%, 75%, you probably don't want to do that with
a tiny video.
For a 1 minute video or a 30-second video, which is what a lot of the Instagram limits are. And the reason why, I tell people to think about this all the time. Like, if you're on the radio, if you flip to a station on the radio, which, I know a lot of people don't listen to radio, but if you got Sirius XM, which I have in my car, or, if you have a not paid Spotify account, right? Like, how long are you willing to listen to something you don't care about because you think something that you want is coming up,
Not 75% of the way through.
Not
sure.
75% of a 2-minute thing, right?
Yeah.
But you might listen for 30 seconds and wait. You might listen for even a minute before you are like, fine, I'm out of here,
Yeah.
So that's why we set that barrier, is because if somebody is willing to just sit through and wait, 50% of a 1 minute video at 30 seconds, it doesn't necessarily indicate a whole lot. So it's better if you're putting out longer videos or, combining these things to kind of nail into something that shows a little bit higher intent.
And there's certain types of content that works on social, which is why one of our number one trainings is Fan Finder Method, which uses video, performance videos, a specific type of video to do this introduction stage, and it delivers you retargetable audience. And so have all of our trainings sort of been created to address different stages of the buddy system. This is just one that's a lot more easy to just say, nope, Fan Finder introduction, very one-to-one relationship there.
Right. Yeah. And you can get really creative with it. But it's tough. Like, unless the video or the content itself is really bad, it's kind of difficult to have a flat out fail on a Fan Finder, which is why it's one of the first things that people do, because now you can have glaring success, definitely. We definitely have.
It solves a problem that a
whoa.
majority of musicians have already come into contact with, and it does so in a pretty immediate fashion once you build it. So it's
right, immediate and
reasons.
Pretty consistent. Like, even if you're not great at being on video, you can probably still find some folks, right? You still want to increase that skill level over time, but it's got to be pretty bad for it to fall on its face entirely. So that's why it's a good intro.
Absolutely. Yeah. And once people do go through that and they are introduced to your video through Fan Finder or any other introduction method that allows you a return path, a way to follow back up, they are now going to be in two camps. The first camp is what we call automatic buddies. And you've been one of these people before. You've probably, like, for instance, me, one day when I'm managing a recording studio in 2015, I walk into a coffee shop and I hear a song and I ask my barista, who's like a friend of mine, I'm like, who is this? He's like, Pokey Lafarge. And I was like, this sounds like riverboat music from the 1940s. And he's like, yep, he's awesome. And so I go home with my coffee, and all morning I learn everything there is to know about Pokey Lafarge. I learn everything because he speaks directly to me. He's exactly, he's something that I already liked but didn't know it yet. I was the right guy for that guy. And I watched his TED Talks and I watched all of his live performances and I told everyone about him. I'm an automatic buddy. I could have easily ended up, I visited his website. I self-educated. Basically, I wanted to know everything I could about him so that I could speak with a level of depth about him when I showed him to other people. And that's what an automatic buddy is. So some people will see your introduction stage and they'll do the second stage all by themselves. You don't need to do anything. And that's called education, is when we decide, okay, if I'm going to put all my eggs in this basket, I really like this music and I'm going to tell other people about it, I got to know some things about it. Number one, to say, oh, this music isn't for neo-Nazis, and so I don't look like a jackass, but also to say, oh, I know something about this. So when I tell someone else about it, I'm not naive, or I'm not, I didn't not do my research, or it's not just one song that I liked. I liked everything. I like everything they're about, and I'm fully ready to make this endorsement to my social circle now. Right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know I've done that for a while when I was a listener of Spotify, more so than I was, for a long time, I just was like, yeah, Spotify, my artist stuff is on there. And that's why I was paying attention to Spotify. And slowly I got more and more into it. I was always an Apple Music kid for the longest time. And then, I was like, all right, well, I'll give Spotify a shot because there's supposedly all this algorithmic, machine learning going on that'll show me music that I like better. And like my Discover Weekly was off. It was so off for like 6 months. And I was like, man, like it's just showing me like wannabe Warped Tour bands. It didn't sound very good, And it was a lot of times it was because of the history that I had on Spotify was listening to other bands that were on Warped Tour like I was and seeing who was on the tour with me and whatever. And so eventually though, over time, it populated into some really cool different things as I gave Spotify more information. And now when I hear something on Discover Weekly, if I'm on the go, maybe not so much, but if I'm at my desktop, which I am a lot of the time, and more and more people probably will be now, I would definitely go search that artist. It would pop out to me audibly, and then I would go search them. And it's amazing. Like if you don't have stuff out there for people to learn about you, they're not going to be able to educate themselves outside of, oh, there's this hot track on Spotify, tight.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a picture of them on Insta. Nice. Like what else is there that you can put out there for people to learn about you?
Yeah. And there's also, that doesn't mean that everyone's going to do that. Like there is also this other group. So the first group's automatic buddies. The second group is just people who they're going to need a little bit of a push to educate themselves.
Exactly.
And in either scenario, the best way to complete the education stage, to take people who went through that introduction gate and put them through that education gate, which is, these are psychological like stages of awareness that they have for you. You need to get them through this gate, whether they put themselves through it or you do it. But either way, before we're ready to buy something from someone or do a favor for someone or give them our phone number, we need to know that they're not part of the Ku Klux Klan. You know what I mean?
Right.
We need to know that they're not like Darth Vader or some shit. So
right.
We need to learn more about them. We need to know that they like don't support like testing on animals for like makeup and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Depending on your preferences. We're not trying to.
Yeah, I'm not. This isn't a political
here.
statement. If you are Darth Vader, I'm not trying to hate on you.
Unless you're in the KKK, I think we could strongly say that we don't agree with you.
We do not support the Ku Klux Klan here at Indepreneur.
We can strongly
that's a hard
say that.
Pass.
Yeah. Right. Hard pass.
Yeah. But so yeah, like that's in real life, we do need to educate ourselves about people. If I meet you at a party, even if your friend introduces you as a great guy or a great gal, and then if you immediately go, can I have your phone number? I'm not going to give it to you, right? You need to have a conversation with me maybe, or I need to know a little bit about you. I need to feel like we vibe. And that's what the education stage is all about. Now, the best way to prepare for this in real tangible life, first of all, is to be prepared, is to have a wealth of content for people to go through. Because ultimately, if you think about it as preparing someone to show you to their friends, which is like kind of like the common first route, is someone likes you enough to be like, I'm going to show this to people to show them that I listen to cool stuff,
Yeah.
And so when they start thinking about that, do you show people one song, or do you show people the song, the video? Oh, check this out. You want to give people a wealth of different angles so that they understand what you see in this artist typically. And so by having content that people can self-educate on, that prepares you for those automatic buddies who are going to be like, I need to learn everything about this artist. This song was amazing. They go, they start pulling the thread. Maybe they find your YouTube channel where you put out a video a week. Maybe they find your podcast where you put out a podcast every week or every month. Maybe they find your weekly recurring live stream. Maybe they find a blog, or maybe they find a really cool website that kind of tells your story. Whatever it is that they find, there needs to be something there for them to find. And it needs to be easy to get to. And when they get there, it needs to have clear signage for what the next step is. So that's kind of preparing for those automatic buddies.
I think too, like this is a lot of indies, communicate to me at least that the education portion is confusing, because they're like, okay, but yeah, I get that I need to put all this stuff out there. I'm already doing that. I've been putting content everywhere. That doesn't necessarily do much. It will if you have something running in the introduction phase, but how do you purposefully educate people? Because you don't have their contact information yet. And this is where I'm going to plug my next training, because Greenlight Warmth Boosting, which is coming out next month, does exactly this. It supports other systems or other phases of the buddy system as well. But what it supports most is education, which you can do very inexpensively. Rather than running like robust campaigns, you're just putting a couple bucks on every single thing that you post to everyone who has interacted with you in Greenlight countries for the past however many months you want to set it. Up to 365 days for IG and Facebook, up to 180 days on your site. So, but education can be more complicated it can seem more complicated to do purposefully, which is why we created this training. But, outside of that little sales pitch, there are ways that you can do this purposefully. But the whole idea is that content is existing anyway, and you're putting a few bucks on it, versus like having a campaign that you're building ads to, achieve a certain thing. Or send people on a certain objective. This is just making sure that you are doing what, we said that a lot of people think doesn't work, like billboards and newsletters and, blogs and things. Like, people may not see your stuff, but if you pay a couple of bucks, they will. And that gives them an opportunity to purposefully see the things that you want them to see to educate them about your artistry.
Yeah. And there's really like two things that can happen, right? If you're running introduction traffic, or you're getting a lot of people introduced to you, like let's say you land on a playlist, right? Let's say you land on a playlist, and let's imagine that playlist, you could actually retarget people who listen to you off of a playlist. You could run an ad to them.
That'd be amazing.
That would be amazing. Spotify, if you're listening, like, come on, bro.
Do that.
Let us put pixels places. Anyways, let us put your pixel in your app, So anyways. Let's imagine that you could retarget those people. Some of those people are going to hear your song off that playlist and be like, I'm going to go search Circa Sacrifice. And they might find the video on my YouTube channel. And then on my YouTube channel, they might also find that I've been putting out a video a week for like a year. And they might find an article on Google about me. So like there's a lot of different assets they might encounter that contribute to education. But one of the biggest ones is recurring content. If you have something that happens on a weekly basis, and when I search you, or if I go from your Facebook ad to your Facebook page and I see, every week this thing happens and here's where I go to see it, and I know what the thing is. If that's true, you got me, because I'm going to watch it. And if I like it, I'm going to keep showing up every week for it. So now that's creating and instantiating a behavior pattern that's really beneficial to your career. Now, if I don't search your name, if I hear the song, I like it, it's dope, I listen to the whole thing, but I don't search your name, Corrin's Greenlight Warmth Boosting will put your content that comes out on a weekly basis in front of me. If I don't like it, I'll eventually cycle out of it. Like if I don't watch any of these videos, I'm eventually not going to be part of these audiences, because you can only retarget people for a certain window of time. It's like a year to 6 months in some cases. So eventually the wrong people get filtered out. The right people are getting picked up and brought through that education gateway. And on the other side of that gateway, they are part of maybe a website visit audience, or maybe a YouTube view audience, or maybe an audience based on the content that you're running in your Greenlight Warmth Boosting campaign. So these are all education strategies that you can employ, being prepared, boosting content, and having something for people to show up every week to.
Yeah, I think that's something, if you think about on YouTube, I follow the makeup gurus. It's a guilty pleasure of mine. But, they'll tell you like videos come out every Monday and Thursday or whatever. They'll tell you what to expect. And so that's why recurring content can be so important. And it's actually, to be honest, it's something that I've struggled with as well. No, I haven't struggled with it. I haven't done it. So let's just say how it is. I haven't done it. And that's going to be changing in the upcoming months because I know how essential it is. And it's something that I've blown off, but this is the time to not do that, especially with the current environment we're in, but you shouldn't be anyway. Just having this stuff there constantly so that people can see it. And know that you're alive and you're actively doing something. And, like that, it's amazing how much that changes someone's perspective on an artist. If they're active right now, they're going to be more invested. If they fall off, if you see even these bigger artists are like, hey guys, I'm going to take a social media break for this period of time. At first, their music streams and all of that will stay the same, and then it'll start dipping off, right? And it's not even linked to the fact that the album is older. It's linked to the fact that they're not active on socials. And so they're not present in the minds of their fans. And so that's what you want to try to avoid. And so recurring content will definitely keep people like, even if they forgot about you for a couple weeks and they go see you again, they're like, oh, well, there's this stuff right here. I can catch up. And now I'm back in the zone with this artist. And so that's why it's so important. And that's one of those things that I'm like, do as Cirque says, not as I do, because Cirque has been great about recurring content and I still need to do it. And if you're not doing it, I would call on you to do it with me. Let's do it. You got to have it out there.
Yeah. And I mean, it takes all forms. It could be a podcast. It could be a YouTube series. It could be a live stream. A while back, ASAP12 of ASAP Mob reached out to my personal profile because he saw me on Brandman's channel because he follows Brandman. And ASAP12 is like a fantastic rapper. And I realized that I wasn't following on my personal. So I followed him. And all of a sudden, I'm now in his world. He posts constantly and he's always live streaming. And I'm never really very far from ASAP12 now. And so his recurring content, if you hear an ASAP12 song, you go follow his Instagram, you're plugged in. You're not going to lose sight of what he's doing. And
right.
So that's a great education stage strategy. Now, later on, when ASAP12 drops you a swipe up, story that's join my, text me right now or that kind of thing, then you're ready to become part of his one-to-one communication instead of seeing all the stuff that everybody sees on Instagram, seeing something more exclusive or having a bit more exclusive, a conversation with him. And that's the next stage of the buddy system. So education, it's all about having recurring content and giving it a boost to the audiences you're creating in your introduction stage. The next stage is getting a one-to-one communication channel with those people who you've kind of introduced and educated. And that's all about the opt-in. Common digital marketing term just means I'm giving you consent to use my email address or my phone number or my Facebook Messenger to contact me about these things. Opt-in.
Yeah, I mean, this is just the most important thing, really, because, I mean, as much as sales are important to have, a viable music career, having the direct contact is pretty much essential to really making sales in a predictable way. I know, when I launched my pre-orders for my greatest hits record to these very warm and nurtured lists of mail and text subscribers that I'd had for several years at this point, I made as many sales as I had on that list because I had this list really fine-tuned and they were also sharing it with their friends. And so when I ended up checking in on my orders, I had more orders than I had on my mailing list. And that's why it's, but my IG right now is 100% archived. There's nothing on my IG profile right now because I'm launching into this big thing. So it's amazing how that audience over time, especially, can be basically the lifeline that is your music career. And I think a lot of people take that for granted. They're like, oh, well, they follow me on IG and it's like, no. You got to be able to tell people this is happening right now and you know it before anyone else knows it. So therefore take action, And it's so amazing to me still how many musicians are like, I don't need to worry about a mailing list. And it's like, oh my gosh, if only you knew, you got to do this part.
Yeah. So yeah, permission is the point at which you get the digits, right? You get the phone number. Like, and this means that all things have gone really well. In any case, right? If you meet someone that you think is cool and you want to be friends with them, or if you meet someone who you think is, attractive and you want to be in a relationship with them, or if you get a fan, the ideal scenario is that they're willing to give you contact information. And I want you guys to all think of contact information by its symbolic form, not by its tangible form. Contact information symbolically means I have thought about all the horrible things that could happen by me giving you this phone number. I mean, in the back of my mind, I at least considered it, even if at a subconscious level, that you could be weird. You could use my phone number in terrible ways, right? Like, I could regret giving you this. But based on everything I've seen so far, it's a good idea. Symbolically, it means I'm so comfortable with this that I'm willing to give you a way to contact me that isn't voluntary for me. It's not something I went on Instagram and looked at your profile. It's non-voluntary. You can reach out to me, reach out and touch me. It's a form of intimacy when you get someone's email address or their phone number or their Facebook Messenger. Like, that is a huge form of intimacy. And I don't want you to overlook it as like, oh, I'm getting opt-ins, it's a huge deal.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why two of the elements here are super important. One, letting people know that they can opt out as soon as, like, in part of that whole process is like, hey, you can give me your information. And if at some point, like, you're not down with this anymore, you can get out. Like, I'm not a spammer. I'm not going to give your information to someone else. You're not stuck, right? This is totally your choice, and it's awesome, and you're not going to want to leave. And the other thing is like I can't tell you how many emails and texts and whatever I've signed up for because I get 10% off my first purchase. Hell yeah, I'll do that. I'll do it on all 5 of my emails and then unsubscribe immediately, right? So that's why it's super important that your opt-ins have something of value that's actually going to get people to engage beyond that first step. Now, of course, when I say like 10% off your first order, that's e-com, right? Musicians aren't really going to be working that way, but that's why it's still important. It's like, okay, you got their information, right? You're offering them something that is valuable. Like, make the most of this opportunity so that they're not like, okay, I got what I wanted and now I'm out, right? So doing this in a really purposeful, meaningful way and having that open, transparent kind of function with that person is super important.
Yeah, I think the permission stage is it's symbolic in its nature because it does represent a significant change in the level of relationship you have with an audience member. But it is also incredibly tangible and real world because it means that you no longer have to pay for advertising or pay another person to reach out to this person. You now have a low cost, effective way to reach out to them yourself. So you don't have to get on a blog. You don't have to get on a playlist. You don't have to run ads. You can just send them a message. And that is a drastic reduction in cost at the same time as being a drastic increase in the level of intimacy in this like artist to fan relationship. It changes the tone of the conversation and all that. And so what the best way to get this, to elicit this kind of exchange, for me, it ties back to what I would do in a social circumstance. As someone who was not likable for the longest time and was able to cultivate some degree of likability in social situations eventually, I had to learn, like, all the tricks of the trade. And part of that is not just saying like, hey, like awkwardly, like, can I get you, like, can you want to sign up? And like, I'll like reach out sometime. We'll hang out. Right. Like cool people at the party are like, hey, I know actually the perfect hairdresser in town. If you don't like your barber, let me give you the number of this guy. Give me your phone number. I'll reach out to you and I'll introduce you to my barber. They're a little bit pricey. They come into your home, but they're sick. Like, you won't be able to find them online or anything like that. They're a secret. Okay, now I've just sort of said, like, I'm going to hook you up. That's why I need your phone number. I don't need your phone number because I'm like desperate for friends. I need your phone number because I'm just like spilling out with value all the time to everyone around me. And that's just the kind of person I am. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah,
like, that's
definitely.
That's what cool people do. Hey, oh, you like the Knicks, I have, floor seats at the Knicks. I never go. I would love to go with you. I'll bring you to the floor. I need an excuse to go. Now, give me your number. If that's the first time someone asks you for your number, you're going to say yes. So having an excuse or a bribe with which to get the contact information is why companies are willing to give you something free to create a positive experience when you opt in. They want to overwhelm you with value so that just like you think that that's the cool guy or gal at the party, you think they're the cool guy or gal at the party.
Yeah, I want to be the cool guy at the party, always. So that's what I'm trying to think about when I invite people to be on my mailing list, And that's one thing too, when I'm looking at the different stages of the buddy system, right? And we're going to continue on with other phases as well, but especially in permission, I think that permission can be one of the hardest places it's that and the first sale, right? Which is the next stage. So and there's like nurturing in there, but permission is one of the big kind of stops, which is why on a lot of my social media, that'll be the thing that I have in the link, right? I'm kind of assuming that they found me somewhere and now they're checking out my stuff and there's a link for them to get something rad from, where they are in that process, when they're excited about it. So like if they go through all of that themselves, right, and then click on that link and I'm like, just give me your email because like, that's so lame. They're like, oh, I was excited and now not as much. I mean, maybe they'll still give me their email because they were naturally in this excite stage themselves, but like you want to make sure that that's something cool, and it's something that really elevates your value to them, like why they would care about this. So I think that's why that permission offer is just so important.
Yeah. Well, you'll hear us all the time say permission offer. What are you offering that gives someone a reason to give you permission for one-to-one communication? And this is not a trick. Like this is like it's not obvious to me that people wouldn't just sign up anyways, but people very rarely sign up for newsletters, right? Like newsletter is a terrible offer. Because what do I get out of it? You get to like tell me the news? No way. You're going
to spam me self-involved stuff that has nothing to do with my life. Like tight.
So, okay. People sign up for things because of a level of exclusivity, because of a level of value that should cost money, but doesn't. These are the types of reasons that people will give you their contact information is to get a deeper level of involvement, to get something that other people won't get, or to get something that would normally cost money.
Right.
And so that's what we think about when we're creating a permission offer is exclusivity and value and intimacy. Is like, okay, if someone digs your music, they want to be involved in a way. That's why we covet being first to discover a band, is because we want to be there at the ground floor. We want to take part in the shaping of their story. And so really the best permission offers give people an opportunity to take part in the creation of your story. And to bring this to a practical level, look, we retarget people who have followed you on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or Twitter even. We retarget people who have been to your website. We run ads against those people with the permission offer. Hey, I'm doing this thing, sign up here. It could be email, it could be text, it could be Facebook Messenger they're signing up with. But that's the practical application of a permission campaign is retarget those people who are in an audience that indicates they've already been educated and ask them to give you permission to communicate with them one-to-one. Now, there are other ways to do it because if you're doing good recurring content, you can also release a video at the same time on your YouTube channel or a podcast or do a live stream or put out an Instagram post, organic traffic where you're saying, hey, I have this exclusive offer.
Right.
So not only can you run ads, but you can also use your organic channels at that point to talk to people who have been educated and bring them into permission. They go through that gateway. And once they're on the other side, they are now in one of these platforms, either a text marketing, email marketing, or messenger marketing platform where you can segment them a lot more granularly than you can as an ad audience. You can say they've clicked on this message and not that one. You can say they are from here and not there. You can say their t-shirt size is this eventually. There's all different types of things you can do to talk to people differently once you clear this all important stage.
Yeah. And I think too, that's why it's also, we're saying permission offer, like make it worth it, but also think it strategically about when they're getting this free thing, right? What are they learning about you in the process? Like how can you create something that is of benefit to them, but also endears them to you further?
Right.
Because you gave it to them. And not just because you gave it to them, but because the content or what's happening behind that permission offer is actually part of them getting to know you better, right? And I think that that's something that maybe is lost, especially when we see a lot of indies are like, yeah, here's, you can get these songs that, maybe they're unreleased and that's a little bit better version. But especially if they're songs that are released, it's like there's not really the same kind of value attributed to that. You really have to pour more of yourself into it. It's not just the music you created, but what's beyond that, because this is the opportunity, right? This is where they decide, oh yeah, I just signed up so I could get this thing and I'm going to unsubscribe. Or I'm in this, I subscribed because this offer is cool. And now that I've received it, it's even more than I thought. And I love this guy, like I want to stay here. So that's what you really need that's how you maximize the permission stage, is making sure that you're not just winging it, like make it worth it.
A good permission offer is not just a magnet, it is also a filter, right? So it's not only going to attract the right people, but it's going to repel the wrong people. People who don't care about going to that stage of, communication with you, you don't want them to sign up. So, $100 iTunes gift card is not a great idea as a subscription giveaway, like,
right.
Because they don't care. They just want that. But you want people who
I'll just love you and leave you.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's very untypical for people to just sign up for your lead magnet, as it's called, your permission offer or permission bribe, and then just unsubscribe in a music context. Because if people are going to sign up for you, they really dig what you're doing already. So that's like, but that all has to do with choosing an offer that pre-selects those people adequately. And then this represents a significant change, because psychologically, up until this point, they've only given you attention. And now they've given you something that has like a tangible value, which is access to them. Now they've given you not just the attention that they're willing to dole out, but additional attention at your choosing. So that's a huge, significant jump. And anytime we make a huge, significant jump, what we're really doing is saying, hey, we want you to do a favor for us. Because up until now, there's no reason for us to suspect that you want to give us that control of your attention. So at this point, you're doing us a favor. It does come with an offer. It does come with a bribe. There's a reason you're doing it, like not just signing up for updates, quote unquote, which is what a lot of people's permission offers are.
Yeah, that's terrible.
But ultimately, you're doing a favor. Like the fan is doing a favor. So anytime this happens, we never want to be in debt to a fan. The buddy system is orchestrated so that you're never in debt psychologically to a fan. They've never done more for you than you have for them. That's really the goal.
Right.
And so, and people say like marketing is shady and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know. The people I follow, they seem to be all about never allowing a customer to have given them more than they gave them.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, not that there isn't like spammy marketing out there, but like the shit that I follow is like that. And so that's kind of the whole point of the buddy system, is never let them have the upper hand in terms of value. You always want to be giving more than you're getting. And so that's why immediately after permission, we nurture, which is we use the contact information. If I offer you to go to this Knicks game, floor seats, and then I don't call you and we don't go to the Knicks game, we're not friends. So the whole point of it is to use it not only to deliver the value you promise, but bonus unexpected value that puts you back at an advantage in terms of how much have you given them. Right. And that's called the nurturing stage.
Yeah, and this is another situation where Greenlight Worth Boosting comes into play. Ha, plug again.
Yeah,
but
it can.
It can be difficult. I mean, obviously you want to make sure that your email or SMS contacts, or however that permission is happening, you want to make sure that you're talking to them consistently, right? And that's a huge chunk of nurturing. But also making sure that they see your posts, right? And we all know that Facebook page organic reach has been down for years now. And, you may be trying to nurture people through the content that you're creating organically. And I know artists that are creating great content and posting 1 to 3 times a day, and they're just not getting seen, right? And so that's where the boosting comes into play again. Is like you can nurture people in this way, right? And be continuing to give them value and make sure that they feel like they're not only that you're omnipresent, but that you're constantly providing something for them that isn't, like asking them to buy something, right?
Yeah.
So that's a great opportunity where both advertising can help you out as well as just staying consistent with the content that's going out to these lists. Don't die off, right? If you're like, hey, give me your email so I can give you this. Once you give them that, great. But now what, right? It doesn't stop there.
Yeah. So the first nurturing stage, because there's more. Anytime a fan is going to potentially get the upper hand on you, like maybe they bought something from you and now they kind of did something for you, you need to do something for them right back. It's like a fight, and you're fighting for dominance of the value structure, right? Like you're not going to give me more than I gave you. So okay, so
I love you more.
Yeah, exactly. So the first nurturing stage, the prerequisite audience for that is someone who has just signed up for your text marketing, your Facebook Messenger, or an email list, or even a mailing list. If old school Misfits Fiend Club, mailing lists, that's still possible. So
I dig that. Yeah, do that.
I love it too. Yeah. And so those are the audiences for this first nurturing stage. The campaign, the gateway that you want them to go through is to have received value from you that they weren't expecting. There's multiple ways to achieve that. You can run an ad that has no call to action, no button that just says, hey, thank you and welcome, right? And it's just you with your cell phone camera just thanking them for signing up. It could be an automation sequence that during the first week that they're signed up to your email list, they get cool content that no one else has ever seen before. That's dope. Or it could be, it could be a direct mail package. It could be a text with surprise value. Whatever it is, the campaign, the way that you get them to go through that gateway is to consume that content. And we can tell that. We can create a return path by saying they had to have opened and clicked this, or they had to have visited this page on your website that your nurturing email points to. They had to have completed this step in order to be right for someone to get offered something for sale, which is the next kind of stage. But staying on nurturing for a second, the gateway is basically them consuming their content. On the other side, you have segments of your list. This is why email marketing kind of wins the day for us, is because if I send you 4 pieces of content via email, you might see 1 or 2 of them and consume it. If I send you 4 pieces of content by text in a week, you're going to unsubscribe. If I send you 4 pieces of content via Facebook Messenger in a week and you don't interact with 2 of them, I'm going to get my permission to use Facebook Messenger removed from me. They're going to revoke it because you can't do that. So, So that's why email kind of is much more advantageous, because it allows us to send more. It doesn't piss people off if they get 2 emails from you that they don't particularly care about. They're just not going to read it. They're not even going to see it. And then one day that subject line is going to catch their eye. After automation sequences, we do take the recurring content of an artist and we'll send that out to those lists, those permission-based nurturing lists on a weekly basis. Whenever new content comes out, it's free, it has value, give it to them for free.
Right.
Have them be first to know about it, So that's kind of the nurturing stage where you're getting people warmed up. You don't just want to get someone on your email list and be like, hey, I've got this thing for sale. You want to give them more value than they've given you. And that's what nurturing's all about.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too, because the way that people interact in my little ecosystem when they're at different stages in nurturing, like I have a membership site and I have an SMS list and I have an email list and I have a Facebook group, right? And so the Facebook group is the lowest hanging fruit and it's the lowest like conversion as far as I can track to buying, right? And the email is next up and the SMS is next up. Like more people buy from a text message than they do from email. And then the people who buy the most are in my membership site. So I'm constantly trying like within, and this is all within nurturing, right? Because there's also like the other stages beyond this, but nurturing is in the center of all of them, right? So I'm constantly trying to move them into the next one because different phase or different pieces of my ecosystem indicate, data wise that more people purchase, right? So now potentially I'm going to increase the size of my SMS list and the conversion rate's going to go down, right? I mean, that's just kind of, I can't expect a complete relative relationship, but there's obviously something about my SMS list getting something 2 days before my email list does that makes them more excited about when these offers do happen, right? Because they feel like they're getting an edge because they're on the SMS list, not just the mailing list. So there's different ways that you can use these, multiple levels within your nurturing to kind of get people to graduate further and further up. And I actually like the fact that this kind of indicates a higher level of intent, which is another reason why we say, like, when you're nurturing, to, clean your list, keep your emails clean, because they're not nurtured anymore if they're not interested after a certain period of time. So, use these indicators to kind of subset and segment your people, whether it's, the way I do it through SMS versus email or whatever, or if it's just the segmentation within your list. Nurture people properly so that you're talking to them in a way that's like, okay, I know where you are and I want you here. So what can I do to get you up there? And that is true nurturing, is really aware of where all these people are, so that you're nurturing them to the next thing, not just nurturing them and loving them in general, which is also good.
Yeah. And once people when people get a dream come true experience, they do things you wouldn't imagine. We have so many comments. I was just going through them because I'm writing copy for some new ads we're going to be doing for Indepreneur. And I had to go through all of the comments on our old ads and look at, okay, what objections did people have to trying us out? What have people said positive about it? Just get all that data. And people go on our ads and just are like, this is the best decision you'll ever make. I've been involved for 2 years. Like, who does that, right? Yeah. Who goes on an ad of a product they already purchased and be like, this is fantastic. I would never,
Yeah, exactly.
And so this is how I learned marketing, was to always be on top of that value sort of struggle, is to always give more value than you get. And for us as a company, it's paid dividends. Like, the types of reactions we get from our community is just like, oh, wow, I never thought that we would make an impact of that level. And so, yeah, it really pays dividends to be on top of that value structure. And then once you've established this relationship where look, I come to you and I do cool stuff and you dig it, and then I make you an offer to get into one-to-one communication with you. And then I not only deliver that value, but I give you more. I not only take you to the Knicks game, but I buy you steak afterwards. And then we go on a crazy ride through New York, and then I take you home. We're best buds now, So, so if you hit me up tomorrow and you're like, hey, I need you to do me a favor. I got a DUI last night. I don't have a license anymore. I need you to drive me to the courthouse so I can get this all sorted out. Right? There's a classic New York story, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So if that's the case, of course you're going to do it, because I just showed you this most amazing time last night. You're going to do me that favor because I've established that anytime you do me a favor, you're going to get it back tenfold. I've already made that. I've established a clear line in the sand for how this is going to work. So that's huge. And it also means that this is when people are finally ready to maybe buy a piece of merch from you, maybe buy a little token of what you got going on, maybe a vinyl. It doesn't really matter what the product is. What matters more is the price point, is that it's not crazy. It's not like you're asking them to loan you $1,000 the next morning. It's something more akin to the ride. It's like $10, $20, something where they can see, kind of dip their toe in the water and see what happens if I give this person money. What's the experience like?
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's why you want to over deliver. That's where it gets really important to be like, yeah, not only did you get this thing, but I'm going to throw in a sticker and, some other stuff and a personal note. And, that's where you start to elevate that experience, because it's like every time you give me something or you do me a favor, I'm going to get you back and more. I love you more. It's that same thing, so that's why it's really important to just be always exceeding those expectations. Because if you give people exactly what they're expecting, then, you're just even at that point, and you never want to be in that position.
Yeah. And so there's a couple different ways to handle this, right? In some instances, we're running strategies that give an experience as the opt-in. Like you're going to take part in this exclusive experience, more like a ride than it is like a membership, you know, like we're not going to like just send you some cool stuff and then we're sending you all this other stuff on a weekly basis. It's more like you're going to go through this thing. One of those things is the Ultimate Album Launch, one of our strategies. But it's essentially tells them there's a defined period of time you're going to receive messages from me and you know what they're going to be about. For Nino Bless, it was you're going to get my whole album for free plus a sort of audio visual experience that you wouldn't get if you just had the album. And it's going to occur over 7 days. Like that's a very clear, you know, experience-based campaign promotion. At the end of it, there is a product offer that is symbolic of the experience you just went through. It's the same reason why I went, like when I was a kid, I had every little grabber toy of like a whale from SeaWorld or like a t-shirt from a roller coaster or something. We always exited through the gift shop and we bought a little token of the experience we just had. That's why people buy things from friggin' the Kraken gift shop at SeaWorld. You know what I mean? It's not because they need a mug with the Kraken on it. It's because they just went on the Kraken and they want to tell that story to people.
I need a mug, you know, but I'm probably going to buy a mug that's indicative of something, right? So yeah, it's funny because we hear that argument all the time. Like, oh, people don't buy CDs and, you know, some cars don't even have CD players anymore and whatever. And it's like, that's not the point. It's a token, right? It's not because there's a utilitarian factor to it. I mean, they might, right? But I know that I have bought many CDs and vinyl that I don't play, right? And we've talked about this on the podcast before, but like you want it. So, and it's funny because as we keep talking about like the permission offer and this sale offer, like you have to, every time you create something, whether it's the content, whether it's the offer, whether it's the product, you have to look both directions, right? Like you have to look, okay, what is the thing that I'm doing that is bringing them in, that's going to make them want this? But also like, how am I actually delivering on that and then directing them to be, you know, inspired enough or motivated enough or passionate enough to be in a place to take the next step later? Maybe not immediately, right? But somewhere. And so like, that's the whole point. So if you sell someone a CD and like, they're not really going to listen to it and that's fine, but then you put some other stuff in there, right? You include like a secret link that's to the back end of your website that they can't, or that they wouldn't see otherwise, a secret link that's like bonus stuff, right? Like you're always trying to set them up for the next thing. So you're not just trying to get them to execute the sale. You're also trying to be like, all right, well, now what can I add to what they get from the sale that makes them feel primed for when I offer them something 3 months from now, right? So that's where the complexity of these offers comes into play, the complexity of your products, like the things that you're doing on purpose, because you are tapping into something emotional and it's it's memorabilia, but it's also like what's to come. And the more that you can incorporate both of those into whatever your offer is, the more that they're just going to kind of progress themselves naturally through these steps of the buddy system.
Yeah. And so the reason that people sometimes purchase off of these sort of experience-based opt-ins, these experience-based permission offers, is that they get nurtured with the experience itself. The experience itself over-delivers on what they signed up for. And then at the end of it, you're offering something tied to the experience. For Nino Bless, that was, an album, a CD, and merchandise with artwork from that experience. So that's one scenario in which someone might go directly from permission through nurturing and then affirmation, which is the next stage. The next gateway is that significant first purchase, usually of something of a lower dollar amount. But sometimes people don't have a offer for affirmation, their first purchase, that is tied to why they signed up in the first place. And that's what I want to talk about, is that sometimes people will sign up because you're offering, let's say, hey, you do a live Q&A on Instagram every week, and the only way that people can ask questions is if they're on their email list, right? And they sign up to ask you a question to go on your live stream next week. And then when they do that, you also send them an album that no one else has ever heard before, a little EP, 4-track. It's not available anywhere else. No one knows about it. And you're like, what? and you check that out, right? And then later on down the line, you get a couple weeks of recurring content, and then that artist runs a sales promotion. Hey, we've had these t-shirts in the store for a little while. We're getting ready for some new designs to come in, like maybe next quarter. So we're going to clear out these designs. They're on sale right now. You can get this for this. Now you're like, I just got a free EP. This artist is dope. I'm on his live stream every week. I'm going to show up next week wearing a t-shirt, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
There's two ways that people become customers for the first time. One is at the end of a dedicated customer creation campaign, and the other is during a sales promotion. And then sometimes people will just be automatic buddies about it and just go to your web store and just make a full cart that's like $200 and just check out. That does happen.
I love those people.
Yeah, you can't build a business around that because it's not something that you manually made happen. It's something that just happened out of the blue. But that does happen.
But I ain't mad at it, even still.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the audience for that offer, that affirmation offer, is people who are on your list and opening and clicking. And when I say that's the audience for it, it means those are the people who are most likely to buy on a sales promotion. If you ran a sales promotion tomorrow, marking down an item from your merch for people, the first people to buy are going to be the people who have been on your list, opening and clicking emails because they're nurtured, and they are. They've given you permission, they've been introduced, they've been educated, they've been nurtured. They're ideal candidates. You're going to see the highest sales rate from them. The second highest sales rate you're going to see is people who are on your email list and aren't opening and clicking but opted in recently. If they get awareness of the sales promotion, they're more likely to buy, and we see that bear out in the data because they did the thing of signing up, which is a stage of intimacy that makes them closer to first purchase.
Yeah.
The third is people who have been educated. If you run a sales promotion and you do, like, people watch your recurring YouTube videos every week, and then you go and you announce it on your YouTube video, some of those people will buy something. But much more likely if they've already been nurtured and they already given you permission. And that's why we do these steps, is to bring them in a logical, step-by-step fashion closer to being a lifelong fan who actually supports your music career or your filmmaking career, whatever it is you do creatively.
Right. And I've said this before as well. That's why it's always important to have the thing that's the next step, because there are going to be people who just want to move to the next step of support because they believe in what you're doing, not even because you made them some kind of crazy offer. So you have to kind of allow your buddy system to be built to support all of these different types of people who will, make a purchase, and make sure that there's something available for them on the other side of that purchase. It's really important to just facet it out, which is why we talk about it so often.
Yeah. And I mean, really the whole goal is to create a pipeline, right? Because up until now, every stage that we've talked about manual things you can do to assure that people go through the gateway of that stage. So if you have a symphony of campaigns and strategies and little habits that you do that fulfill all of these things, then you are on autopilot bringing people all the way through to purchase. On autopilot. And it's a pipeline. There's tons of people who have been introduced to you. Less than that, go and educate. Less than that, sign up. Less than that, actually open and click. And less than that, buy. But it's a pipeline. They're always moving through it. And these habits and systems you create do that effectively. Whether it be, you're running a different permission campaign every month, or you've got one up for years and years and years. Whether it be that you're always doing new fan finders to get new introduced audiences, or you've got one that just does it for you. You have a system where some of the things you're doing, you don't need to redo. And this is what economies of scale is. This is what builds a huge business, is being able to leave things behind that you built a year ago that still do the job you wanted it to do when you built it.
Right. This is what posting on TikTok and releasing singles on Spotify and just putting organic content out won't do for you. And it's not,
it doesn't give you momentum.
Exactly. All of that is the very first part of what we say you need to have a sustainable music career. And that's why it's we could go ahead and talk to you about what's going on with TikTok maybe, or how to get, certain branding or an aesthetic on IG, right? But in our minds, That is only the very first step of all of these other things that you have in place. And as hard as you're working on that first stage, you have to have all the rest of this to make it make sense and to actually grow on purpose and have, some future in your music career. So it's definitely something that takes a lot of purposeful intent in order to just keep working for you, so that when you are doing this front-loaded stuff, you can feel good about that, knowing that there are these pieces in place after that will help this continue on for you.
Yeah. And I think we were thinking about splitting this into 3 episodes, but I don't think we actually need to, because the remaining stages are, once you've gotten that first purchase from someone, what do you do after someone does you a favor? You do them a bigger favor. You nurture once again, over deliver. And then they're ready for a second purchase later on down the line, maybe something a little bit higher value. And that's what we call ascension. You're ascending this fan to a higher level of support. And that might be someone going from $10 on Patreon to $100, or it might be someone buying a CD and then next time buying a hoodie or buying a couple concert tickets, and then you nurture again, and now people are ready for high levels of support, like a digital membership or like a VIP experience. Or in the case of Dave Pettigrew, who I think you can go to episode, I think it's like in the 90s, we have an episode. If you just go to search Indepreneur Dave Pettigrew, then you'll find an episode with one of our agency clients who does retreats that are in the, I think, thousands or hundreds of dollars. And people sign up for them because he has people at that stage. Now, the reason that those are the remaining stages of what we call the activation chain. This is when people are actually becoming part of the engine that supports your music business. Or I'm sorry, monetization chain. And after that, there's the activation chain, which is people becomes like tiers of first level support. They actually turn people on in their social network to your music. They refer people to your music. They advocate on your behalf by being part of your street team or changing their profile picture to your album cover when it releases or anything like that. When they promote on your behalf, they're in this activation chain. So those are the rest of the stages of the buddy system, but they're less important for us to talk about because most people out there who are learning music marketing or want to need to know about these first 5 stages, because it's what they're probably most often kind of getting all jumbled up, trying to do all of them at once. And even worse than that is when people build out these stages trying to, like, let's say you get 100 people to learn about you through a fan finder and educate themselves. And now you're trying to get 100 opt-ins from those 100 people. And now you're trying to sell 100, items to those 100 opt-ins. That's never going to happen. 100 people watch you at the top tier, maybe 10 will sign up, maybe, and 0 will purchase. Like that's much more likely to be the case for you. The people who we have success with, like for instance, like some of our agency clients, they have huge warm audiences of people who have been introduced and educated. They have big email lists, but not as big. And then they have sizable, but not crazy customer lists. And this is their full-time living. We work directly with people like that, but they're not with this poverty mindset of like, okay, we're going to leverage as much budget as we can to get 100 people an introduction and then kind of try to move them through and subsidize that. Like that's not going to work.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I think that's something that that's why it's so important to be able to track all this stuff. And that's where the advocacy and referral, kind of upper stages of this activation chain are important, is that you now have all of these people, right? And you kind of know what the dial down is going to be, right? So maybe each time you go to the next step, it's 10%, right? So you've got 10,000 people watching your stuff, and then at 75%, and then 1,000 people opt in, and then you might make 100 sales, and you might make 10 second sales, right? If you were talking about like bam, 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 all in a row. And so if those 10 people all tell 5 of their friends, and they're at that point where like, I bought 2 things from this guy. Like, this isn't just like, go check out this song on Spotify. This is like, yo, I'm in this guy's membership and it is fire and you need to go do it. You might be able to skip some of those steps with those people, right?
Yeah.
Like, not literally, but that's kind of what's happening, is that someone else already did all that work for you, right? And that's where these, higher tier stuff come into play, because not only, are you making more money and is this one person more dedicated, but they're also helping other people skip the hardest parts of this, which is selling what you're doing in the first place.
Yeah. And of those people who drop off, those 90% each stage that are going to drop off in this hypothetical, 10% of them, they're going to take 6 months to do that next stage. It's not that they're never going to, they just have a longer, sort of buying cycle or a longer attention cycle. It takes them a while. They're late adopters. They don't jump on it as quickly. That's fine. But if you don't have campaigns that are in these stages always there for them, then they're never going to take that next step. So it's about building these perpetual systems. And it's why all of this year and last year, I'm focusing on introduction and education. One, for my music, that is. And that's one, to get not only the sizable audience in this top part of the funnel, what we call tofu or top of funnel. And that's like those first few stages, introduction, education. Not only to get a huge audience there, but to create systems, processes, workflows that I use. Like, okay, every Thursday I record a video and a song. And then I edit it on Saturdays, and then I put it out on Mondays, and now I have that system in place. Here's the people who help me out with it. Here's how it happens. When I first started, I didn't know all that stuff. I didn't have that dialed down. There's all types of errors I'm going to encounter. So getting all that let out and leaving behind a system that I don't have to touch again is of primary importance. When we were building this business, we went, system by system. A lot of our systems still run to this day from 2017 or 2018. And that's what it's about. So I implore you, if you're learning about this stuff for the first time, to take a lot of time focusing on each stage and building a system you can leave behind that works without your constant care and attention.
Definitely. Yeah. And what's fun is that after you get into this place where you've got more of that built up and you're not like, okay, I'm starting over and I'm building this whole thing. Go, right? For me, like my mailing list has been building for the last 10 years, but really I did a huge clean out when I left the military because there were so many people on the list who were, attracted to a different piece of my brand that I didn't want associated with anymore, which was being in the military. I'm like, but that's not really what I'm all about, right? I'm all about music and that's part of who I am, but I don't want anyone to be a fan of my music just because of that. So I did a huge clean out. And when I saw that my mailing list was really effective in selling these pre-orders for my album, I was like, okay, I'm going to be spending my time and dollars doing two things. One, elevating these purchasers through a membership and creating a referral program and, basically setting them up to be the ones who are really advocating for me hard. And then building out a whole new front line. Because I can't just say like, okay, I've got these couple thousand mailing list members, so therefore I'm good. You can't stop there, So now I'm rebuilding the whole front end because, you never stop doing that. And I think, for a while when I was dormant between these album cycles, I kind of took that for granted. And then when I, announced the pre-orders and like, more than that many of people bought, I was like, damn, like I need to get this going again. Like I really took it for granted. So the more that you build that out in the front now, the better off you'll be later, because that's the kind of people you want. You want your mailing list full of people who are super passionate about what you're doing, support your career, and then also advocate others to support your career.
Yeah, exactly. And I really, my hope for this episode was that we tied back all these theory and like all these hypothetical concepts based on human relationships back to like real tangible things, like your email list,
right,
your ads, your audiences, like how you target these people and the gateway they're going through. Like I want you to see all that, because last time we spent 4 episodes talking about the buddy system, but I still feel like a lot of people maybe, 2 years ago listening to that arc didn't get what we intended out of it. I want people to know that,
we can see that. We can see that from the indies that are in the community and what they're expressing confusion about. And, even in the founder session, like what are people still missing? And it's always the buddy system. And it's like, okay, how can we make this not just like, okay, think about it in a theoretical way, but also these are the things you do. And, so we're going to keep touching on it as long as indies need it.
There's so much.
Because it's so essential.
Yeah, this podcast could have been like 10 episodes because there's so much to go over. Like we didn't even talk about how you might diagnose a campaign or how you build a campaign from scratch to address these stages or send people through these gateways. But like we do a lot of training about that. It's in our Indie Pro membership. Try it out if you want a deeper dive on that stuff. But ultimately, like I hope that I brought a few people along on this one, because I kind of black out when I talk about this stuff. But like, I hope I don't listen back on this and be like, oh, I forgot to explain this. But like, the reason we use this system is because, and it's not a unique thing. It's not something that we like divine. We were given it like on the hill with the burning bush. Like this, that's not how it went down. Like, this is real marketing psychology that we use this heuristic to explain it. Digital Marketer has one too that they call the customer value journey. One of my favorite podcasts, I Love Marketing, has like an 8-step thing that they call the profit activators, or the 8 profit activators. So they're like, anyone who's talking good marketing has some kind of system to break down psychologically different stages of awareness and make campaigns address people at that stage. And they differ a little bit. Ours is more well suited to like the artist to fan relationship. And that's why we have our own. Otherwise, we'd just say, go download Digital Marketer's customer value journey and learn that, Yeah. If we didn't need to, we wouldn't.
Exactly. Right. Because it is just a whole different kind of learning and engagement process, but it is all built on other smart people's stuff. And then taking what we know about music and how the fan structure works, So,
and this stuff is almost 100 years old now, like these kinds of concepts. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why you can trust, like, you don't even just have to trust us, right? Because you're trusting all of these other people who have developed it over time. And we've just like been like, okay, but for musicians, like, this is an interpretation. This is a translation. But like it's been tried and true. And if we can give indies more tangible ways to sustain their music careers, especially in the time we are right now, then that's what we go and do.
Absolutely. So yeah, hopefully this little 2-part episode kind of took any new indies who haven't been with us for that long, gave them a full contact experience with the buddy system. I hope that any existing indies also now understand the buddy system better.
Most dev.
Hell yeah. And beyond that, we're going to see you next week on Creative Juice.